What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Almost Functional 40K. Here to talk about my thoughts on the new Space Wolves after having got some test games in with them. Um, so far, I was doing really, really well with the Champions of Russ stuff before the new stuff came out. So I was really, really happy with where Wolves were at before the new book. Then the new models came out, and I was like, man, these new models look amazing. Hopefully, the new rules will be on par with that, or at least as good as what we currently have. When I first got and started reading through the leaked codexes or codex, I was a little underwhelmed. We had some cool rules and stuff, but the detachments were very, very underwhelming. After playing Champions of Russ, I felt like the Wolf detachments were a step back from what we had. Now, the data sheets seem to be better in most cases. So we lost a little of our detachment strength, gained some data sheet strength, but then they threw in all the Space Wolf versus Step this Astartes keyword restrictions so that all of the Space Wolf characters in the supplement can only lead certain Space Wolf units from the supplement and none of the units from Codex Space Marines. And the same thing with Codex Space Marines, none of their characters can join any of the new Space Wolf units. So that took a few combos out of there, like you can't run a Judicar with head takers. You can't put Y'all with his assault and advance and or auto 6 advance in with Stern Guard, which I thought would have been a really cool. So there's a bunch of really, really cool combos, really strong combos we could have come up with if we had been able to freely mix and match between the books a little bit more like other chapters can. But for some reason, they decided to really, really limit wolves. There's rumors of Space Wolves, not Space Marines 2.0 coming out, so perhaps there will be more restrictions when that book comes out for limiting like Blood Angels, Dark Angels, and stuff like that as well. So we'll see if that ends up having any kind of carryover, like where a prediction of what's coming for Marines, or if they just decided to make Space Wolves more restrictive than anybody else, and they're not going to put that in the future. So we'll see. But with that being said, so I got some test games in. My first test game, into World Eaters, lost. I hadn't played the new World Eaters yet, or played the new Wolves yet, so I was learning both armies at the same time. So I made a few mistakes with how I should use the Wolves, as well as a few mistakes as to what should be priorities in the World Eaters. I do think Wolves can play well into World Eaters now that I know both armies a little more. I do think there's some stuff there. But then after that, that's the only game I've lost with them so far. I've won, I believe, my other 5 test games, and most of them fairly handily. So I've found that the new Wolves have been very, very strong into a lot of stuff. Obviously, there's a lot more stuff I need to playtest into. Once events hit, I'll be able to take it to events and get to play into different calibers of players, different layouts, different, I've been trying to play on different layouts and missions. But obviously, we'll have new missions coming this weekend. So there's a lot more to still figure out here, but so far I've been fairly happy with what Wolves are doing. So I will show you guys the list I am currently running. So right now I'm running Logan with 5 Wolfguard Terminators, Arjack with 5 Wolfguard Terminators, Ragnar with 6 Head Takers with shields running in an Impulsor, Bjorn, a squad of Intercessors, a squad of Suppressors, Scouts, 2 Iron Priests, a squad of Fenrisian Wolves, one squad of 3 Thunderwolf Cavalry, a Ballistus, and 2 Lancers. And as for detachments, I've played most of my games in Saga the Bold. I did also play tests with Beastslayer. I found that the list performed fairly similarly. Didn't really matter which detachment it is. The data sheets and their buffs they give to each other work really in any of them. They're not really detachment reliant. But with that being said, I found just for my own personal play style and the way I've designed this list to play that I like bold. The negative damage just really techs into the survivability of Terminators and helps there, even with the head takers. The free, not heroic, but the free charge on your opponent's charge phase is really, really strong. I haven't got to use it yet, but the threat of it has forced opponents not to move on to objectives. So most of the time, people really, really play around it, which is just as strong as being able to use it. The lethals and the extra being able to put a reroll hits on another unit, uh, as in addition to your oath target, has been really, really helpful. I haven't the one where you make a head taker or Terminator Sergeant or pack leader count as a character so they can get the buffs hasn't come up because I run characters in those units. If for some reason Ragnar, Logan, or RJ ever gets like precisioned out, then I could still use that and get some buffs on those units. And then the advance and charge strat is huge because Ragnar advances and charge for free with the head takers, but now it gives you ability to rapid ingress or something, and then be able to advance and charge with the Terminators, which I find is really, really useful. So I've played one game into Tau, one game into Necron's Star Shatter. It was actually a complete mirror of Richard Siegler's list. The guy playing it was a good player, but he's not Siegler's level, so I'm not saying it would beat Siegler, but it can play into other people piloting that type of list. Uh, I played into Eldari twice, and I played into a Salamander Firestorm list. Um, so the Eldari, it just rolled over. But I find Wolves, I didn't have a problem with Eldari before anyway. Really hard to kill pressure armies, just are good counter for Eldari in general. But mainly what I do is I start Logan and Arjak in reserve. Turn one, I normally drop Logan somewhere central, depending on the layout, somewhere central and cover, so he, on the next turn, or a turn later, depending on when I want to push, he can push middle of the table and just get his neg 1 CP or +1 CP, however you want to figure it out, or out in to as big an area as possible. And then the Terminators be a -1 to wound with 4 wounds, and the Storm Shields, because I'm running Storm Shielder axe on 4 guys, and then the big axe on the Sergeant. Debating whether or not to put the Assault Cannon Power Fist in there, because right now I'm just proxying models because I don't have the new Terminators. Whether having one guy, so having 2 guys at 3 wounds, but having this a little bit of shooting from the Assault Cannon and the Power Fist for some Strength 8, or just going with the 4/4 wound guys and really no shooting out of the unit. I could go either way, although I'm thinking I should play test the Assault Cannon. Just having that little bit of shooting out of there could be real, real nice. And then normally Rjack, depending on who goes first or second, will either Deep Strike on my second turn or Rapid Ingress, just depending on how the game's playing out. They normally, Rjack's unit, I've been trying to Rapid Ingress on like a side flank and then a piece of terrain safely, because with a 6-inch move and access to advance and charge, they can really, really come flying out of there and hit something. And a lot of times I'll send Ragnar's unit advancing out of the Impulsor on like turn 2 or 3, along with Rjack's squad and Logan's squad, and just put them all in your face at once. So far, most armies haven't been able to deal with that. They'll normally be able to pick up 1 at most, and then the other 2 are in them. And normally I can get those charged. I normally do it on a turn where they all can try to charge something that first turn, so they get some return for themselves, and then you're pressuring the opponent. Kind of like Wolf Jail, but not exactly. Just you're pressuring on the other side of the objectives on their side of the board, so they kind of have to come through 2 Terminator units and the head taker squad to get to the middle objectives. And then we have Bjorn. Bjorn just the +1 CP just makes him always worth it to me. And then he more guards my backfield and doesn't push till later in the game. So probably turn 3, 4, or 5, just so I get at least a couple turns guaranteed CP before I even start thinking about putting him in harm's way. And he's a good Overwatch threat or countercharge that if someone tries to drop something behind you, which I normally try to screen out, but occasionally people find a hole, especially with smaller units. Scouts, same as I've always used them. If you've seen in my other list building videos, they normally infiltrate up toward the middle, depending on the layout, either toward a side or dead center, just so if I go second, they can scout back into a building. And then turn one, they can hopefully be in position to contain, area denial, locust the middle, get an extend, secure, anything like that. So I can score points without really having to expose much else from the army. Uh, Suppressors, kind of doing the same thing with their just a 12-inch move unit for 75 points. 48-inch range, 9 shots. I believe they hit on 4, strength 8, neg 1, 2 damage. So they can do a little damage. Whatever they hit is -1 to hit itself the next turn, which is useful. But normally they just, with a 12-inch move, jump out, do some containments, some cleanses, stuff like that. So if you get any shooting out of them, great. But they're just a little scoring unit. Could easily be dropped out for assault intercessors or something like that at 75 points. And then intercessors, what I've been doing with them is stickying my home objective and then having them push up and jump in the impulsor once Ragnar squads jump out on the push turn. And then they're able to try to go up a flank or something like that and get to and possibly sticky another objective, help clear out some little trash that's going there, maybe trying to flank around your big stuff while they're trying to deal with more important targets. And then the Fenrisian wolves, a lot of times, depending on if I'm fighting another melee army, I'll put them up front and use them as a sacrificial screen so I can really pick where the fights happen as much as I can. But in other matchups, they will just fill the hole where the intercessors leave. Once the intercessors sticky, then I don't need to see on an objective. They'll stay back there and screen so nobody can get a cheap drop in back there to turn off my sticky. Then we have the Ballistus and 2 Lancers with the 2 Iron Priests. Just giving the rapid fire to those units is really, really nice. The Lancers basically get 3 shots at 36. On an Embold, once you get the Saga up, they basically get to reroll 2 hits, 2 wounds, and 2 damage. So just really, really makes the Lancers super efficient. And the Ballistus, once people get in range, you could put the rapid fire on it. So it's basically 3 las cannon shots, 3 missile shots, crack missile shots at 24 inches. Sometimes I'll even put it on Bjorn, where at 18 inches, his Hellfrost is 2 shots, just depending on what the board state is. And then you can heal some of the stuff if it gets damaged slightly. And then Iron Priest also, with being alone up, can do some sabotages and stuff like that while being safe. And what I find normally happens is once the 3 big units have made their push, the shooting base can kind of start moving up toward the middle a little bit. And so late game, I'm holding the middle of the board with all the tanks and the Iron Priests once I'm in their line with the rest of it. And then Thunderwolves Cavalry, I'm using just the same as like the suppressors. They're fast, they're real cheap, they're super durable, so you can use them a little more, expose them a little more than like suppressors or scouts. But they just, one game I had them 2 turns in a row do a contain and then a sabotage, and just never left my deployment, or more, they were out just outside my deployment, so it was all Crucible. They moved right up into that one little building there, but they just sat there and did actions for 2 turns, which I would never have done with Thunderwolves before. But now they're so cheap that's easy to do. But they're another unit that's good for throwing out the screen, kill another person's little scoring unit, hold an objective without really exposing any of your army. And this really can work in, like I said earlier, just about any detachment. You can try it in Hunter, you can try it in Bold, you can try it in Beast Slayer, just depending on your play style. I like having the advance and charge for that go turn, and I like having the counter charge just to scare people. And then the -1 damage can come in big with, because you have a bunch of 4 wound stuff and 3 wound stuff. So if they're shooting you with 2 damage, you can really tank them. If they're shooting you with 3 damage into your head takers, It's real nice. 3 damage doesn't really bother your Terminators because it's the same as 2 damage. But if you're fighting something like Doomsday Arcs or something and they shoot some 4 damage at your Terminators, it's real nice because now it takes 2 through to kill one instead of 1. So it's just nice to have that strat in your pocket, even if you don't use it all the time. But some situations, it's super, super strong. But even though I was initially a little down on the rules when I read through, the data sheets are so strong, I don't think not having super strong detachments will really, really hurt us. And you can easily stick this into like a Stormlance or a Gladius or something like that because we're not really getting a lot of damage buffs other than Beast Slayer can give you some lethal. Bold can give you a couple rerolls. But just having the advance and charge, fall back and charge all the time in Stormlance with your big units would be cool. Gladius, just have an advance and shoot turn with all this shooting, your advance and charge turn, and then a fallback shoot and charge turn if people try to like tag your Lancers and stuff. So really this list can fit in, not just this, I think Wolves in general can find really, really good builds in almost any detachment just because the data sheets are strong that even if they had no detachment rules, I think they would still be a very, very solid army. So you just find which detachment rules and couple stratagems buff the play style and the way you want to build your list. And I think Wolves can do really, really well. I think they're pointed really nicely, which I believe is also due to the restrictions they put on us. So they could make us some of our characters a little cheaper because they know what 2 or 3 units they can join in all the combos. Whereas before, sometimes you could stick a character in a unit and give it a combo maybe they hadn't actually thought about. Now they have to either raise the point of the character or the unit. And so I think they tried to be a little restrictive there so they could give us a little cheaper stuff. And these are the points, not that are in the book. These are the ones that have been leaked and I believe are what are in the will be put out as the official points on the release this weekend. We'll see if the points are slightly different. The suppressors could easily be dropped. It's nice having that extra little unit there, but they're not like needed. The list would still perform fine without them. So there's 75 points there to play with if a couple of these units go up. But that's it. I think as Wolves, we should be super, super happy. Aiden and I on the Tuesday video, our Wolf Council, think we're going to do a tier list of where we rank all the units and stuff like that. But I don't think there's really a super bad unit in the Codex. We'll get into that more tomorrow. There's a couple that could use some buffs or some changes, but I think overall, all of our data sheets have useful stuff. But yeah, feel free to give me comments, thoughts on my list, thoughts on your guys' lists. Send us some lists you've been working on and if you've got any playtesting in, what thoughts you've had. But so far, I found this is really, really strong. Oh, and some of the stuff I started with. Originally, I wasn't running RJack in the Terminators. I was running another Impulsor with Head Takers and a Wolf Priest. After watching Dan on Hobby Goblins play some Wolves with RJack, I really, really liked him. Dan ran a 10-man. I tried to fit the 10-man in. It was just too many points. Took away too much of the other stuff I wanted to do, so I dropped it down to a 5-man, and I've been really happy with it. I actually played a game with both Terminator squads and both Head Taker squads, and it was fine, but I felt like I was missing a little bit of mission play, so I ended up dropping the second Head Taker squad and gave me a little more shooting and some more small units to do stuff with. Then I was originally thinking about taking a second Ballistus, and that list didn't have the Fenrisian Wolves or the Thunder Wolves because that was 140 exactly, but I decided to drop him for them because I thought I was just going a little too heavy into shooting and not enough mission. I actually have some Predator Annihilators on order. I'm going to build. I think Predator Annihilators fit really, really well in here. I just don't own any, but for 135 points, they do just as much as the Ballistus or Lancer, or possibly even more into big targets. Like the ballistas has the storm bolter and can shoot frag. The lanthers has a bunch of storm bolters and the stubber, so they get a bunch of little incidental shots that's helpful into chaff that you won't really have with the predator. But I've possibly dropped one of those units for predator or something just to really help into the big stuff. Um, I've had some people in our Space Wolf chat talking about like the some of the storm speeder stuff with the rapid fire being really useful. But I think there's a lot of flexibility in the builds with what shooting you give to the Iron Priests. And obviously, you can go 3 Iron Priests, Iron Storm, like some real weird builds like that, which I think could be real strong. I like combat, so I'm not going that way because at that point, you only probably run like 1 counterattack combat unit, maybe 2, but like you just really focus more on shooting at that point, which I think could be really good, but that's not the playstyle I enjoy. And that's one thing I'm enjoying about Wolves is I think it tailors to a bunch of playstyles right now. You can go super shooty, you can go super combat, you can go more balanced, which is kind of where I'm a little at right now. And I'm finding that they're really fun. Um, I'm working on a converted Logan. I have my converted Ragnar done. I got to paint for my Red Wolves chapter, or Dread Wolves, my Dread Wolves. If you follow the Facebook or anything, um, I posted a link on there. I'm actually working on the lore for the Dread Wolves, their backstory, why they're red, all that kind of stuff, just so if anybody's ever interested in that beyond just me, it's out there as to the story behind my chapter. But if you're still here, thanks for listening to me ramble. Like, share, subscribe, all that cool stuff. We just became a YouTube partner, so now we can start doing memberships. You can do super chats on our lives now, cool stuff like that. So we're gonna hopefully keep growing. Eventually, I'm gonna start getting to doing these battle reports. As you saw last Tuesday, the internet where I work, which is also where I'm gonna be able to do the battle reports, is a little iffy. So I got to work on getting better internet there before we can start doing the battle reports. But once I get that figured out, that's really the last step, other than getting hopefully someone local to come help me figure out some of the logistics of getting multiple cameras and all that stuff up and running at the same time. Because I'm okay with computers, but I'm not like super tech savvy. I'm more of a construction guy. That's what I've done my whole life. So floors and drywall and like all that kind of stuff I can do. But when it comes to computers, I can only do so much. I'm slowly learning as I'm doing this YouTube stuff. But feel free, please like, share, subscribe, all that cool stuff. Help us keep growing. Help us keep bringing this Space Wolf content to you. And we'll see you guys next time.